Okay, it's the time. Good morning, good day, and good evening for everyone who are online, and very warmly welcome to this technical workshop about maritime connectivity platform and Secom. My name is Juho Pitkänen, and I work as the head of digital services at Fintraffic VTS in Finland. And besides that, I also serve as a Secretary General for Maritime Connectivity Consortium, that is developing MCP concept, and you will hear. As I said, this is technical workshop, so we will have lots of content for technical people and go to details. But before we start deep dive into the technologies, I have a presentation describing a bit background and the idea behind these technologies. So where this all belongs together is that shipping and maritime business is global, and there's a need for, in a digitizing world, to secure and globally managed data provision from shore to ship and ship to shore, and also data distribution to other stakeholders that are related to shipping. So the challenge is that how these new digital maritime services can be reached globally. So there has to be global coverage regardless of where we are on the globe and where the services are. But because there is no single point of authority, maritime business and shipping is free, and there are multiple stakeholders, so services are provided in a distributed way. So how do we can combine these two different trends in the maritime data and maritime digitalization? To make this question a bit more concrete, I have here separate questions, sub-questions that we start to look at. So how we can achieve machine readability and common understanding of this navigation information and data. And then when we have the common understanding and common data structure, how then we can provide this information to vessels and other users in timely manner and so that it's secure and also globally standardized, so that everybody can access it easily and know several different overlapping implementations is needed. And then also how these services can be found. As I said, they are provided distributed manner globally. So there's a need for mechanisms to help users and the ships to find the correct services and correct information. And then also, as I said, we have to secure the communication against different cyber threats that are always present in the digital domain. And then more dedicated question, there's also, besides of IP-based communication, need to support different narrowband communication methods that are now being developed for the maritime domain as well. So we have to address those. And the answer lies very much in the global standardization work and the global standards. So basically the ISO S100 data model that is also promulgated as the IMO Common Maritime Data Structure for any navigation information, it is the way to find and define the information in a unified manner and a standardized way. And then for the provision of services, technical services that use this data model and then utilize Secom as a secure communication method is a way to provide services over IP connectivity in harmonized manner. And then for finding the information, and securing the communication, the MCP identity registry together with Secom. MCP family, there's also solution for this narrowband and non-IP transports as well. So basically, there's two sets of standards or two domains. We have to have that kind of harmonized and decentralized platform. Can you please ensure that you are muted? There are some noise coming from online. So there's a harmonized and decentralized platform which is based on common internet technologies that supports this global data delivery, and it's not only for S100. It can and it should support also other kind of data. And then we have on top of these building blocks, we will have other building blocks to build standardized data and services, delivering that data and distribute that to the users. So what animal then this MCP Maritime Connectivity Platform is? So as I described already earlier, there are three main components that are independent and can be implemented independent and provided independently, but they are designed to work seamlessly and secure manner together. And they are the Identity Registry, MIR, Maritime Service Registry, MSR, and Maritime Messaging Service, MMS. And one of the kind of myths or misunderstandings is that the MCP could be one platform, one implementation for the provision of services. It's more likely to be described as concept. So it's a set of standards and set of guidelines how to implement implementations of these three services and how to provide those services to support the data exchange. And MCP contains already now some extra features besides of these main components. You will hear more about them later. But there is, for example, this global search, maritime global search platform, which supports this kind of federation of different service registries. So there can be, and I would say there should be several MCP implementations over the globe to make this work efficiently. Then something about the background of MCP and this MCC. So MCP is not a new concept. It has roots in EU-funded projects, STM, etc., around 2011 even. So there has been years of development and testing before this concept has been kind of get a wider audience. Maritime Connectivity Platform Consortium to support this development of MCP was established 2019. And as it shows on the left-hand side bottom, this is inspired by the way the World Wide Web standards have been developed. So this is open and free consortium that develops concept, technical design, runs test environment, and also ensures that the MCP providers follow the minimum requirements and the guidelines so that they will provide services in a unified manner. But it's also good to know that this is a kind of vehicle to develop these things, and all the specifications of MCP platform will be and are forwarded to relevant maritime organizations so that they will be developed to international guidelines and standards. And as we are in the technical workshop, I would emphasize the thing that the input from the community, input from the current and the becoming developers and the service providers is important in order to develop further, and the MCP consortium is very open to the new ideas and proposals that come from the kind of clear implementation. So this is not supposed to be anything that is done only on the desk or on paper, but it has a close communications with the people who are doing the implementations and running the services. And therefore, this consortium is important because we can get the closer connection to the, how to say, real implementations than maybe the standardization organization. Okay, then there will be more in details about the standards, but just to recap the building blocks, what we have and what they are for. So Secom is ISE standard. It's for secure and also supporting bidirectional communication between ship and shore, but it can be used as well as between shore services and other end users than ships. So it's basically the secure communication end to end. MCP identity registry is, I would say, a PKI for maritime services. So it provides a Secom, for example, for the Secom, the needed Secom PKI or PKI services for Secom, as well as PKI for VDES. Can provide PKI for VDES, which is VHF digital exchange method. Service registry is a kind of yellow pages of the sea, so management of service information and publishing that information to the users, and as well as supporting the discovery of technical services. And then MMS is for global routing of messages, store and forward functionality for narrowband and non-IP connectivities, but as well as IP connectivity. So it's kind of the Swiss knife for different communication means. And the key point here is that all these standards and guidelines, they are based on commonly used internet standards. Only MMS has its own protocols defined, but otherwise all these services are using the already existing and well-known technologies. There is no any proprietary standards or anything that is not that would be a challenge for developers to learn. So what these guidelines do is how they describe that how to use these commonly used and well-known internet standards in unified manner when implementing services and when providing the services. This picture is directly from IEC specification for Secom. So this is basically the high-level concept of what Secom consists of. So we have on the left-hand side, we have a different shore-side data providers and data elements. And then right-hand side, we have, in this case, a ship system. And Secom is providing a secure communication channel between these both ends. And it's good to know that besides of the communication channel security, it provides also end-to-end data protection from shore to ship and ship to shore. And just to illustrate the role of MCP components, there are these boxes down which are in Secom defined in generalized way: identity registry and service registry. MCP, MSR, and MIR can serve these functions for the Secom. So basically, MCP is supporting implementation of Secom. Identity registry supports the security in various ways. As I said, it secures the communication channel between the service provider and consumer, regardless of if they are only shore-side or ship-side or combination of shore and ship-side. It prevents cyber attacks on data and services as well. There are two levels to protect, I would say. And then it helps to assign digital identities to any entities in a maritime domain, being it ships or services or service providers. So that creates and maintains the trust. And as I already earlier described, this can be used far beyond of S100 and e-navigation. Any maritime digitalization or maritime domain service can benefit from this kind of fundamental PKI infrastructure. And maritime service registry, on the other hand, I would say that the main use case is provide functionality where the users of the data can find the services they are needing. So there is, for example, the digital voyage plan that can be used as a search parameter for the service registry, so that the vessel or the shipping company that is planning to voyage across the globe can find the relevant e-navigation services along the way. And then those services can be used various different appliances or applications, being it this integrated navigation system or electronic charge system, or basically any application or mass planning or operating functions in the future. For the developers, I would highlight a couple of capabilities that already exist. So for start, when you start to implement your services and test your services or test other parties' services, there is already global capabilities that support the development and testing. And most important one for the MCP is IALA endorsed MCP test instance. You will find information about this test instance from IALA's homepage, and the link is in my presentation. And there you will find instructions how to register for the test instance and how to use that in your own development and testing. And then when there is a development of the real, I would say, real e-navigation services, there's another nice thing that we have supporting the development and testing as well. There's an initiative called Open Digital Incubator, which is open and free forum, I would say a developer forum, for any digital maritime service development and testing. So it's a kind of peer-to-peer knowledge sharing on technical standards and specifications from developers' perspective. So basically in that forum, we share our own experiences and try to find the common way to how to read these and how to implement these standards. And there's also practical things. There's a sharing of open source assets for software development and testing. For example, Secom libraries, which you can use as an example, and then also which kind of help you to kickstart the development. You don't have to understand fully all the technical finances of Secom, but you can start using existing components and test material to start your development. And of course, as I say, it's a discussion, lesson learned, and support from developer to developer and from service provider side to service user side. We have regular meetings every 2 weeks online, so it's free and open for everybody to join. And I would say that the kind of the recap is that you should develop and test as you operate, so we can do kind of DevOps like test development in this community. So that ends my presentation. I will leave floor for the kind of the real experts, but before that we have some minutes time, and if there's any questions to me about my presentation or these basic concepts, I'm happy to answer at this place. Okay. I am then almost ready. I can spend a couple of minutes just to show the okay. I can show couple of slides that open up a bit who are behind the MCP consortium. So-called host members running the board of the MCP consortium are here. So CRISO, Korea, Canadian Coast Guard, Canada, Australian Maritime Safety Authority, House in UK and Finland. MCP community is 5 organizations as members. Complete list you can find at the MCP consortium website. And then there are also governmental observers from Sweden, Korea, Denmark, and Japan who also participate in this work. So if there are now organizations that are not yet members of MCP consortium, we are very welcome to join our work, and you will find the instructions to join at the MCP webpage. Okay, no more questions, so I for the next presenter.
Okay, thank you very much, Juho. I think your sound was unfortunately breaking up a little bit at the end. My name is Thomas Christensen. I'm the initiator of this Open Digital Incubator that has arranged this seminar. And I'll just mention that, as you probably all already have noticed, this seminar is being recorded. And the recording will be made available to everybody after the seminar. Our next presenter is Minsu Jion from the Ayala Secretariat. He is not able to attend, so he has made a recording of his presentation. So I will try to share my screen in the right way and make this recording shown for everybody. Should be able to see my screen. And hopefully you will also have the video with sound.
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to present at this important seminar on the work of the Secom and MCP in international organizations. Before we dive into the Secom and MCP, I'd like to take a step back and share some broader perspective on the digitalization from Ayala's viewpoint. So before we dive into the digitalization, we could have a look at the broader context of technology development in the maritime industry. Looking at the key trends could give us a strong foundation for understanding of the ongoing digital transformation of the maritime services. Well, one effective way to identify this trend is by looking at the discussions from big conferences in the maritime. In 2023, Ayala hosted its largest event, the Ayala Conference in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil. And more than 600 maritime and age navigation experts from around the world participated. And over 150 presentations were delivered. So on the screen, you can see the key conclusions from the conference. I will not go through all of them, but I like to highlight a few points that are particularly relevant to today's discussion. I believe that there are 4 major trends that are shaping the future of the maritime sector, namely automation, connectivity, sustainability, and digitalization. First thing is on the automation. Although the development of the MaaS is progressing more slowly than initially expected, the potential impact is significant. This autonomous technology could fundamentally reshape the maritime infrastructure and operations. That's why it is important to closely monitor its evolution and prepare for its eventual integration into the normal operations. And secondly, for the connectivity, although some questions remain, we already seen enhancements to legacy systems such as VDES and NAVDAT that improve the existing service capabilities. On the VDES matters, the last IMO MSC approved the draft amendment to the SOLAS Chapter 5 and its appendix to introduce VDES, which will be entering into force on the 1st January 2028. And also, the committee endorsed the draft resolution and guidelines on VDES performance standards and operational use. And additionally, the rapid expansion of the low Earth orbit satellite technology is overcoming the long-standing cost and bandwidth limitations in the satellite communications. As a result, connectivity is becoming more accessible and its application continues to expand. While certainly addressing the climate change and supporting the UN Sustainable Development Goals have become essential elements of the technology development. It is clear that our committee must play an active role in contributing to this global effort. However, the pathways towards achieving this meaningful impact are not always very straightforward. To explore these challenges and opportunities, IALA is hosting a sustainability workshop this week at the moment in Dublin, Ireland, which is why I'm here in Dublin at the moment. The workshop will focus on how the marine age navigation sector can contribute to advancing sustainability and environmental stewardship. And lastly, the topic of today, digitalization. Well, in fact, digitalization in the maritime sector didn't start just recently. It can be traced back to the e-navigation initiative, which began more than 20 years ago. The fundamental goal of e-navigation has always been a harmonization of how the marine information is collected, integrated, exchanged, presented, and analyzed. Within this framework, services such as many things, not only age navigation, but also VTS, search and rescue, pollution monitoring, and communication have been developed. I will try to explain a little bit about maritime service, technical service, and product specifications in a little bit more in detail in the following slides. But let me make one point here about communications. We are entering in a new era where the multiple data exchange channels are becoming available. These include the IP-based communications, such as LEO satellite, mobile, and also on the other side, non-IP-based communications, such as VDS, AIS, and ASM. Among these, VDS is expected to play a particularly important role in enabling maritime digital communications in the near future. Just recently, IALA approved the two important developments in terms of the VDES. The first thing was about VDES authentication, and secondly, VDES signal measurements. These two steps mark very significant progress in the preparing more connected and data-driven maritime environment. To enable digitalization and e-navigation, 3 main building blocks are required. I think these are already covered by a previous speaker. But maybe because this is so important, so maybe I can repeat this again. So the first building block is a description of the maritime service in the context of e-navigation. These define the service at a high level, including the operational aspects. On the right side of this diagram, the second building block is product specifications, harmonize the data format based on S100 framework. And the final building block, which is shown in the middle, is the technical service, which is for data exchange and information exchange. This is where IALA Guideline 1128 comes in, providing the standard for information exchange that makes seamless communication possible. These relations are not strictly one-to-one. A single service can connect to several others. With this framework in mind, let me introduce you these building blocks a little bit more in detail. On this slide, let me show you how these elements fit together with the overall IALA framework. It summarizes the key IALA publications that are defined maritime service, technical service, and product specifications, all of which collectively support the S100-based digital ecosystem. At the top, we have a standards 1070, which provides the overarching framework for the information service. And underneath that, there are 2 recommendations at the moment, one covering the maritime service and another for product specifications. However, at this stage, there is no dedicated recommendation for the technical service. For the maritime service, we have a guideline 1155 and 1161, which describe how to develop maritime service definitions and evaluation platforms. For the product specifications, the committee revised guideline 1106 last year, providing an updated procedure for producing IALA product specifications. And for the technical service, several key guidelines are in place. G1128 on specification on the technical service, and G1157 web-based S100 data exchange or IP-based communications, and G1183 on the provision of the MCP identities, and also G1191 on the Maritime Service Registry or MSR, which was approved just recently. Together, these standards and guidelines support the ongoing development of the both product specifications and the technical specifications. So based on these standards, we have specifications. So on the product specifications, we have S201, 125, 210, 212, and 240. And also in terms of the technical service specification, we have a route exchange service and VTS traffic clearance service. And finally, we also have 2 testbed platforms supporting this work. For the product specifications, the IALA S200 test and validation tool is available. And also for the technical service, the Open Digital Incubator, which enables testing and validation of the new service specifications. On this slide, you can see the list of the old IALA working product specifications. ARM committee is working on S201 on edge navigation information, and also S125 on the marine edge navigation product specifications in cooperation with IHO Midweek. And also ENG committee is working on the S240 on the PNT related product specifications. Just recently there was some update, so ENG committee made the decision to delete 4 product specifications, but decided to make a new product specifications on S241 on the PNT station almanac, which is a little bit static information, and also S242 on PNT grid data, which is a dynamic data. And also DTEC has product specifications under the development, and also VTS committee has 2 product specifications, S210 on inter-VTS exchange format, and the other one is S212 on VTS digital information service. This slide shows the list of the technical service. On the upper right side of the slide, this diagram illustrates how the service concept is structured. The first thing is a service specification, which defines what the service is intended to do in a technology agnostic way. It sets out the operational context and the data model, as well as the interface, input, output, and any constraints. And secondly, the service technical design. This layer explains how the service is implemented. This includes the chosen protocol, message exchange, patterns, and etc. Lastly, the service instance for each real-world deployment. This entry contains the endpoint detail and coverage area and version and provider identity and other key metadata. So the table on the screen provides a summary of the technical service currently under the development within IALA, reflecting the work of its 4 technical committees. In this slide and next slide, I would like to introduce 2 examples of the technical service. These are just examples. The first one is on the VTS traffic clearance service. One of the core responsibility of the VTS is to monitor and manage ships movement, especially in busy and confined area, such as port and narrow waterways. To ensure the safety and efficiency, VTS provide a traffic clearance, essentially granting permission for a ship to enter, leave, or maneuver within the controlled area. Traditionally, this clearance has been communicated via voice radio. However, there is a shift towards digitizing this process. And another service is the route exchange service. When a ship sends its planned route, which is 421 to VTS, it helps improve safety by clarifying the ship's intention and predict arrivals and departure more accurately, and enables just-in-time operations, reducing the delays and cost. The route exchange service acts as a digital link between the ships and VTS, supporting the main function. On the next 2 slides, I'd like to introduce 2 relatively new publications on the MCP and Secom. So the first one is a G1183. This guideline defines how secure digital identities are issued and managed within the maritime connectivity platform. It established a foundation for trusted maritime communications by assigning each entity a unique maritime resource name, and linking into certified digital identities. Through decentralized public key infrastructure and the governance by the MCP consortium, G1183 ensures that ship service and authorities can authenticate and exchange information securely in a global maritime environment. And this is another guideline, 1191, which specifies the technical design of the Maritime Service Registry, or MSR. This is another core component of the MCP. MSR allows ship and shore systems to register and discover maritime digital service securely through a standardized interface and trusted identities. And together with G1183, it forms the backbone of the globally connected and interoperable digital maritime ecosystem, supporting the transition to the next generation of the e-navigation and S100-based services. So that brings me to the final slide. I hope this presentation has provided a clear overview of the IALA's ongoing work on the digitalization and given you a sense how this effort from a secure identities to a global service registry are coming together to enable a safer, smarter, and a more sustainable maritime future. So thank you very much for your attention.
Yep. Thank you very much, Minsu. And obviously, Minsu is not taking questions right now. Mute. So we will move on in the program here, and the next session here will be about different countries and their initiatives and involvement in this area. Starting with you, Caroline.
Yeah, good day to you all. I'm just trying to put on my camera to say hello. Hi, everybody. Thomas, I shared my presentation with you since I have a bit of a problem sharing my screen, so I would be very thankful if you could show it. Yeah, good day to you all. My name is Caroline Johansson. I work for the Swedish Maritime Administration. I work in the hydrographic office, so maybe this presentation will be a little bit hydrography oriented, but of course I will give you examples on other fields of interest that we work with in Sweden. And thank you, Thomas, for sharing my presentation. You could switch slide, please. So, in general, in Sweden and in the hydrographic office, we are following the IHO timeline for hydrographic products, the IMO Maritime Service 11 and 12. Products are to be in operational version 2026, the phase 1 route monitoring products or services. And for us in Sweden, we will develop and to some extent implement them before 2029, all of the ones that you can see in the phase 1 except for under keel clearance management. We have a couple of prioritized development areas in regards to digitalization, and that also have a bearing on this technical seminar. And those areas are S100, as mentioned, and also remote pilotage. We have kind of a big involvement in the IHO Infrastructure Center, where an IHO MCP is being established. Unfortunately, or good for you, for the processes that I'm not the person involved, but I would be happy to forward any contact to him if you have any questions. We are engaged in the IMO and CSR work on the guidance to establish a framework for data distribution and global IP-based connectivity for ECDIS S100 products. Of course, ECDIS, S100 ECDIS is a very relevant topic for us since we produce a lot of S100 products. Our VTS systems, they are prepared for S421, and we have for a long time been and are still engaged in development of Secom, both internally and also in the IEC. So you can switch slide, please. Projects are a big part of our development in Sweden, and we are very happy and thankful that we are able to get funding, mostly from the EU. And I'm just going to list some of the projects and very, very briefly mention them, the ones that are relevant for this seminar. They are about S100 standards and remote pilotage, and you can say that if not now, so in the future, we would need to look at new methods of distribution. For instance, in the project listed at the far down, dynamic navigation, where we will develop the real-time parts of water level adjustment and surface currents, and also develop and implement navigational warnings in S124 format. These standards are dynamic and potentially requires new methods of distribution. So this will also be an activity in the project to analyze the needs and look at different possibilities of distribution. And we also have this remote pilotage project going on, and are very happy that a new big EU project got funded. It's called Nelson, where we in Sweden will further develop and implement remote pilotage. So you can switch slide, please. And as we can see, in basically all the development, at least all the development that is on digitalization within the maritime branch, the red thread is that bigger data volumes are being handled. There is a need for better bandwidth. In Minso's presentation, he already mentioned IP connectivity, and we very much support that work going on in the IMO and CSR. We can also see the need for real-time distribution of some of the S100 standards, not at least navigational warnings at S124. And I mean, this is a maritime universe with interoperable services where connectivity is key, and not only for hydrographic products and services, but for all IMO maritime service in the context of e-navigation. And we are all of us that are engaged or that own services, maritime services, we strive towards the same goal with higher safety in shipping and also better products, better services, and better usability for the mariners. And we also see the need and work for collaboration between international organizations for a harmonized approach to this digitalization and development that is going on right now. You can switch slide, please. Yeah, I was also planning to show some of the work that we are doing, or creds should be where creds should be. I can see that our IT architect Per de Flon is with us today, and it's actually him who has developed what I'm going to present right now. So big credits to Per. Anyway, I was going to show some of the work that we are doing in relation to Secom and S100 ECDIS. The green boxes in the diagram represent S100 components that need to be included in an S100 ECDIS. And you are probably familiar with S98, but anyway, it's a standard that describes S100 related ECDIS functionality. Linked to this is another standard, S164, which contains the test infrastructure, allowing OEMs developing S100 ECDIS to perform tests that verify functionality. You can switch slide. So if an OEM wants to develop an S100 ECDIS, S98 specifies that for S124 navigational warnings and S129 under key clearance management, it should have Secom compatibility. This requirement also entails tests to verify that Secom functionality within the ECDIS. There are 3 use cases described in S98 that define the Secom functionality requirements. It's service discovery, service management or subscription, and reception acknowledgement. And us or Per at the Swedish Maritime Administration has developed tests for these cases. The tests are designed using S124 since it represents the type of dataset that will be used with this communication infrastructure. However, just to clarify, the purpose of the tests is not for S124 itself. That's just the information payload that Secom is expected to handle in these tests. The tests are focused on verifying Secom functionality within an S100 ECDIS. You can switch slide, please. And the IHO will host the components needed to test the items or use cases 1, 2, and 3 against. It's a specialized S124 Secom service with a predictable behavior, and also an MCP backend to enable this service. But this is not a full-scale MCP in any way. It's developed only for these tests, and it contains a minimal maritime service register listing just this one Secom service, and a minimalist maritime identity register. And if everything goes according to plan, description of the tests are to be published in S164 during 2026. So yeah, that was a very, very brief overview of what we in Sweden are doing right now that relates to the seminar, and also some of our plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And we have lots of time relating to our plan here. So if anybody have any questions at this stage, you are welcome to raise your hand. 3, 2, 1, 0. If not, then we will move on to Denmark. Christopher?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so well, I'm from the Danish Emergency Management Agency, formerly DMA. My name is Christopher Sarnak, and I've been involved in e-navigation and that kind of things for 10 years or so. And I was asked to make a short presentation about the government perspective from our point of view on how to use MCP and Secom. And I will find a presentation. Maybe I should share my screen also. Do you see it now?
Yes.
Excellent. So, I mean, we fully support about the everything that has been said before, you can say, about the interoperability of services across nations, and because shipping is a global business, so you shouldn't be forced to look up in different communications and documents just because you cross a border. Everything should be synchronized and harmonized. But what I will focus on is our small business, which is does it change the slide?
No.
Yeah. Why not?
That I cannot answer.
Ah, okay.
Now it did. Okay.
So, yeah, maybe it will jump a bit now because I pressed several times. But anyway, my department or office, or what you can say, is called Safety of Navigation, National Waters. And what we focus on is to provide safety of navigation, safety at sea, in Danish waters. That's what you can see on the top right. That's our area. We also have Greenland and the Faroe Islands. And we are also the VTS competent authority, but we are not the VTS operators. So I will not touch upon the VTS services, but mostly safety at sea and safety of navigation. Safety at sea, you could say what I mean there. That's the lighthouses and the buoys, and having a formalized and standardized way of describing those, which is defined by IALA and the S201 service. And safety of navigation, here I mean to be able to reach the mariners on the ship with the relevant information on how they can secure a safe journey from port to port. So, and in short, harmonized services across the world, that is at least our viewpoint is a way to reach increased safety at sea. Oh, no, it worked. Okay, so what we are providing from our office is maritime safety information. And this is what you can say time-critical information. So our goal is to reach the mariner on board the ship with this information as soon as we learn about it. Could be a drifting container, could be one of the buoys not operating as it should or not being in place. And what we have today, which is the global agreed upon standard, that is the NAVTEX. And you can see the NAVTEX receiver in the photo here, and it's built on technology from the 70s. And you can say this is from a 40-year-old publication, which describes how the provision of maritime safety information was designed back then. It was fully functional in 1991, but that's the way it works today. And I mean, we have internet and stuff, and also what you read on these NAVTEX papers. I mean, it's not always that you can reach all the characters coming out. So let's say we find there is room for improvement. Not dismissing, I mean, the whole NAVTEX and the global setup that the IHO and the other. Oh, wait, and the other international organizations set up, because it's really a groundbreaking collaboration, agreeing on all this on a global scale, but still. we have moved on 40 years. So also, we now have a shift towards S100 data, which has to reach the ship. And these data packages require some different kind of connection than Navtex. So you could say it requires any type of connection, which also Minsu from Ayala mentioned. Can be IP, can be VDES or NavDat. But the key requirement of all this connection is that in order to get the International Maritime Organization to agree upon a connection which goes straight into the navigation unit of the ship, the Ectis, it needs to be a trusted connection, and it needs to be a secure connection. So has to be available all times, and has to be you have to be able to trust the sender of data, and the sender should know that the ones receiving it are the correct ones. Yeah. So the S100 data that you could say our little office is in charge of, that's ATON management S201, and the navigational warnings S124, and the notices to mariners that we send out as, or that we are going to send out as S125. The standard is not really in place yet. And in order to test all this, as Caroline mentioned, we try to be involved in as many projects as we can, because this doesn't really work from day one. You need to have testing in waters and in simulators to make sure that everything works when you put it out on the ship. Just like you don't produce a car before it has run through 8 years of testing with the electronics. So what we have engaged in is a project called Madame, which is coordinated by Turkey University of Applied Sciences. And in the concrete stuff that we did was that we developed the Danish S124 navigational warning service to support our MSI navigational warning service, that it supported S124. So that's what we have done in this project. And you can see some of the partners that were involved in some of the testing that we did just last month. So we, on board the ship that you saw on the first slide, we had installed some, the PC there is equipped with open CPN chart display. And what we did was then that we, from the office, sent an S124 message, got it through MCP and Secom connections. So everything that is showed on this chart display that you see on the screen, it's only MCP validated identities that are able to provide data to be shown on the screen. And during the test, we then promulgated, as it's called, 3 navigational warnings, and they showed up on the screen. And unfortunately, I don't have a photo of the information in the warnings, but if you click on it, you can also see that the warning has been provided by this and this competent authority with this and this MCP authentication. What do I have else? Yes. In order to make all this happen just in Denmark, I mean, if we just focus on how we're going to make this work in the countries itself. It needs a lot of coordination country-wise. So we have these 5 national authorities who are engaged in coordinating how to provide S100 data and maritime services in Danish waters. And together we also align the work that is going to be carried out in Denmark by visiting and contributing in the international fora. That could be IALA and IMO, and as the largest one, but also WMO and so on, and also the technical fora like IAC and joining the World Radio Conference, at least with inputs through the national coordinator. And I think that was it from my end. Yes. And if you have any questions, I'm here. You can send me an email afterwards. And also, thank you for inviting me to speak here at the meetings.
Of course, Christopher. Thank you very much. And we're in well time. So if you have any questions now, just raise a virtual hand. No.
I can hear the ovations.
Yeah. Okay. Then we'll move on to the situation in Finland. Juho, back to you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see how I will keep the video off because it seems that the connectivity is not the best available. That is because I'm at the moment not in Finland, but in Germany, in premises of Federal Maritime and Hydrographic Agency in Hamburg, where we are in one small piece making this e-navigation to happen. There is a first ever joint meeting of IHO Baltic Sea and North Sea MSI working groups, and one of the important topics to discuss here is the S124 and the promulgation of navigation warning information in Baltic Sea and North Sea area, also using these new e-navigation ways. But let's start and go to the Finland. Can you confirm that my screen is showing to you?
Yes.
Good. So, digitalization of maritime services in Finland in a nutshell. We have identified, inspired from this S100 world picture, which is very famous from IHO, we have kind of recognized several services and several data products that are relevant for Finnish maritime domain, and there is a kind of roadmap how these services will be developed, and I would say in a good pace on the way implementing these services as well as supporting platform services. So to kind of put everything in a nutshell, Finland, the development of digital maritime services is aimed for SOLAS vessels, or mainly for SOLAS vessels, following all this international harmonization we have heard today, based on, of course, on IMO resolutions and guidelines and IALA and other international organizations. Our development kind of consists of two main pieces. So development of national e-navigation platform and testbed following this Maritime Connectivity Consortium concept, and then development of these e-navigation services then based on IALA, IHO, and IEC standards. We are developing and testing this kind of pilot services, which are not yet operational, but there's also ongoing work on development of operational e-navigation services as well. And two things that are very common to other presenters, that we seek actively participation in different EU-funded projects to develop and test these e-navigation services. I think that this kind of common projects work very well in this domain, because this has to be, as in a previous presentation told, that it has to be globally kind of harmonized, and now we can find partners that develop the same things across at least the European countries. And then another kind of important thing is that we don't just want to keep what we have learned for our own benefit, but we want to share and participate actively to the international standardization efforts of various organizations which are developing these, I would say, e-navigation building blocks. I also had the short presentation about MADAMED project, so we are also part of that. I won't go to the details because already two presenters have information about the project, but we are partner there, as well as FTIA, other Finnish governmental organization, and also other partners in Finland in this project. And this project, we have been participating in the development of these digital services as well as MCP components. And testing and piloting is the key of this project, which is now ongoing. So to emphasize that we are already implemented something that is ready for testing and ready for piloting. There's some information about the tests in Finland in MADAMED project. So this spring we had the two pilot sessions. One was simulator tests in April in Turku at the Aboa Mare Maritime School Bridge Simulator, where there was a S100 ECS system that can be seen in the picture, and that was used by real seafarers, both bridge personnel and also the pilots, and then other end operated by real VTS operators that can be seen in the right-hand side. And there we tested three services: navigation warnings, H2 navigation, and VTS traffic clearance services. And this was continued in May with the onboard pilot on board of Finnline's vessel Finsirius, and the test area was Archipelago Sea area in Finland. And there again, a real personnel from the ship used the services, not for the real operations, but they were doing testing besides of their normal duties. And again, these three services were tested. And by showing this, I would emphasize that we really want to make these services available and also usable for the real users. So we got a lot of good feedback, both for development of these services, but also to report back to the international organizations that develop the specifications and standards. So that is the very important part of the e-navigation development. So to recap what we have been doing and what we will do in the future, we are at the moment operating the National Maritime Connectivity Platform test instance, which is based on the managed public cloud instances. And we have the MIR implemented that was used in these MADAMED tests, and also MSR that we have also been testing. The caveat at the moment, it doesn't support all the functionalities in IR guidelines, so this is individual instance full-blown MSR, but without support for connecting the other MSRs, global search. And this MSR component was implemented part of the EU Indirect Management project. In the future, we will continue with the MCP platform for the operational use. So we will make this now testbed full-blown operational MCP instance, also including in the future support for global search for the interconnectivity of MCP instances. And then we will extend this national MCP testbed. Besides core component, we want to implement connectivity to MMS router network and also connectivity to VDES test system that we are operating. What comes to the development of e-navigation services itself, we, as I showed you, implemented these 3 services in Finland in EU Indirect Management project. Navigation warnings and VTS service, VTS traffic service was implemented by FinTraffic, and this list of flights S125 service was implemented by FTIA, the Finnish Transportation Infrastructure Agency. And we will continue this development. So next phase is start implementing in another EU project, Nelson, this route exchange service based on S421 route plan exchange format by IEC, and then also, when available, the IALA specification for digital VTS information service that will be next on our list. And there is already ongoing project to develop first e-navigation service for operational use. Our national competent authority, Traficom, is implementing a new national navigation warnings management system that is natively supporting S124 data format. And the FinTraffic is implementing as a conjunction of that service or system distribution service for promulgating navigation warnings using S124 format based on Secom interfaces. And then to give you some examples of what these standards can do. So we have here a screenshot of AMSA's NavUI user interface. AMSA will be present the Australian point of view next. And this AMSA's test UI can show the Finnish navigation and warning information, which is shown on this screenshot. And here are screenshots from the test environment, what we used in Management project. There are Finnish S124 and S125 information on S100 capable ECS, and also the background map information of the digital navigational map is also S101 produced by Traficom. So we have here actually 3 different S100 products in this view. And here you can see also the big report from the S124 information, navigational warnings information. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juho. And if there are no questions, there are definitely hands, but no hands for questions. Then we will move a little bit away from Finland to Australia. Julius Müller will present, but he is not online, so he also has pre-recorded a video. So I think I'm sharing that now.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Julius Müller. I'm a senior advisor for digitalization and communications at the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. And apologies that I couldn't attend this seminar in person, but in this short presentation, I will give you a brief overview of the work on S100, Secom, and MCP in Australia. So to start with, my organization, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, or AMSA, is the national maritime safety regulator in Australia. We have several responsibilities, including the coordination of search and rescue operations and responding to pollution incidents. On the right-hand side, you can see some of our maritime and aviation assets that we're using to do that. We also manage ship registration in Australia, maritime qualifications, and coastal pilotage. We do port state control inspections and also run quite a large network of aids to navigation. AMSA is also the NAV Area 10 coordinator, and we are the competent authority for VTS in Australia as well. We have, I believe, 21 offices across the country, with the head office located in Australia's capital city, Canberra. So as you may know, S100 is one of the most discussed digitalization technologies in the maritime domain at the moment, drawing lots of attention. And when it comes to the implementation of Secom and MCP, one of the main motivations for us is obviously S100. And there are multiple different new S100 product specifications that will be produced by different agencies in Australia. But if you look at the ones interesting for AMSA, most of them need to be distributed in real time. Now, the one currently most mature from our point of view is S124, that provides the next generation navigational warnings, complementing the existing text-based S53 navigational warnings we use at the moment. Now, obviously, S124 is time and safety critical information and should be provided to the mariner as fast as possible. Other examples relevant for us are S129, underkeel clearance management information, which could be part of an upgrade of our existing UKCM system in the Torres Strait, for example, but also ship-related products such as S421 for the exchange of route plans and other S100 products used in the context of vessel traffic services. As I said, all of these need to be distributed in real time, and that is especially hard because we have so much international traffic. Of course, we could regulate how Australian ships should receive this information and then find lots of different solutions to cover all of the other ships visiting Australia. But we obviously believe that this kind of data exchange should be harmonized globally and also be interoperable. We have found that Secom and MCP are the most sure or most appropriate technologies currently available to do this. Of course, AMSA is not the only organization in Australia with an interest in the maritime domain, and S100, Secom and MCP as well. These technologies are a complex framework. And of course, that requires some coordination between government agencies, who is going to produce what specific S100 product in what area, how are we going to provide them to the ships. But we also, of course, need cooperation with industry like shipping companies, ports, and technology providers. This is why we in Australia have established a national working group with all the interested parties in our region. And this is currently chaired by the Australian Hydrographic Office. another very important stakeholder regarding S100 in the Australian context. And the group is vice chaired by AMSA. We have about 85 members and over 30 government agencies represented. Now, this group decides on how S100 and the supporting technologies such as Secom and MCP should be implemented in Australia, and also provides advice to all the relevant stakeholders. Over the years, since these technologies have been developed, we made the experience that there are several regulatory and technical gaps in the framework, and have also raised many of these issues at international organizations such as the International Maritime Organization, IMO, International Hydrographic Organization, IHO, and the International Organization for Marine Aids to Navigation, IALA. Now, it is part of our strategy. It is part of our strategy to clarify these issues and to gather international support for certain technologies such as Secom and MCP, making sure that the overarching framework is harmonized and that all of the new equipment used on board ships will be compatible with services provided in Australia. We have, of course, also implemented prototypes to support our national and international work, one of which is the NavUI, which I believe will be demonstrated later as part of the seminar. Without going into too much details, we have currently working prototypes providing S124 and S421 using Secom and the IALA MCP test instance. We have also worked with several other member states to validate compatibility and ensure that our services can work together, complying with these international standards. Australia has also established a general S100 testbed through our national S100 working group. If you want to learn more about our national trials, feel free to reach out to me. Now, finally, regarding the way forward, we hope for the finalization of the IMO guidelines for real-time S100 exchange that currently reference Secom and MCP as an example architecture. We fully support the establishment of MCP instances by IHO and IALA, and would expect also that some member states and industry entities will establish their own instances. On the ship side, the expectation would be that active manufacturers finally start to implement and test Secom to meet the 2029 implementation deadlines, and also to support Secom at least for S421 as required by the IMO's active performance standards. In Australia, the first product to be provided via Secom and MCP will likely be S124 navigational warnings, which is from our point of view the most mature real-time product at this stage. And this will then hopefully lead to harmonized and interoperable real-time S100 services, not only in Australia, but also on the global level. With that, thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, I'm sure some of the people here in the seminar would be able to help. Or if you have specific questions regarding Australia, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Julius. He obviously is not answering any questions now. But now in our trip around the world, we have reached the shores of Canada. So over to you, Valerie.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'll just do a quick introduction of myself first, and I'll turn off my camera and start the presentation. So good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I'll take a moment here to introduce myself. I'm Valerie Marquette, Canada's Nav Area and NavTex Coordinator, and I work for the Canadian Coast Guard. And I'll just turn off the video and start to share. And can you see it now, or do I have to click something else? Share, maybe?
I think it's coming. Yes, we see it now.
Okay, perfect. So this presentation today highlights Canada's strategic use of Secom and the maritime connectivity platform technologies to deliver S100 services. So the presentation highlights how we've moved from concept to operational reality, developing secure, standardized frameworks for maritime data exchange and connectivity. At the heart of this effort is the Canadian Coast Guard's participation in the IHO-endorsed S100 sea trials along the St. Lawrence River. Today, I'll walk you through how Secom and MCP are being used to deliver S124 navigational warnings, the tools we've developed to visualize S100 products, and the key findings and advantages emerging from this work. Canada has adopted a strategic and forward-looking approach to implementing S100 maritime services by leveraging two key technologies, Secom and MCP. You already know what these are, so I'll skip ahead. In terms of implementation, Canada has made significant progress. This includes developing Secom services, addressing challenges in converting legacy data to S100 formats, and conducting integration and testing to ensure operational readiness. Service registration and authentication mechanisms are now in place, laying the groundwork for scalable and secure maritime service delivery. Together, Secom and MCP form a robust framework that supports Canada's delivery of S124 navigational warnings and positions us as a leader in the global transition to S100 standards. The Canada S100 sea trials offer a powerful demonstration of the collaborative work happening behind the scenes to produce, deliver, and visualize S100 data in real-world conditions. These trials are not just technical exercises. They're a showcase of operational readiness and innovation. Since June 2025, the Canadian Coast Guard, in partnership with domestic stakeholders and under the endorsement of the IHO, has been conducting sea trials along a 350-kilometer stretch of the St. Lawrence River. The trials are designed to test Phase 1 S100 hydrographic products in a complex and demanding environment. The trial area includes tidal zones, reversing currents, and compulsory pilotage, making it ideal for robust testing. 7 S100 layers are being evaluated, including ENC, bathymetry, water levels, currents, navigational warnings, catalogs, and underkeel clearance. Canada's Secom-based S124 service is actively contributing to the trials, delivering navigational warnings and demonstrating the operational viability of our S100 service framework. These trials will continue through November 30th of 2025 and represent a whole-of-government approach to advancing e-navigation and maritime safety. This slide shows a visual overview of most of the S100 layers currently available in the St. Lawrence River sea trial. Please note this is a static view of test datasets, not a live feed from a connected S100 service. The layers displayed include S101 electronic navigational chart, S102 bathymetric bathymetric surface shown as the purple X's in the bottom. S104 is water level information. S111 are surface currents shown as green arrows. S124 navigational warnings, which is the purple NW icon shown in the bottom left. Not shown in this view is S128, which is catalog of navigational products, which is not expected to be visualized, and S129 underkeel clearance management, which is not relevant in this part of the river. This visualization is part of an OSI maritime systems solution in development. As highlighted on the OSI YouTube channel, the power of S100 lies in its ability to supplement S101 ENC data with high-resolution S102 bathymetry, adjust navigation layers in real time using S104 water level data, and help navigators make informed decisions based on their planned time of arrival at each waypoint. The original video and more details are available on the Sea Trial website, canadas100.ca. The Canadian Coast Guard's S124 service represents a major step forward in delivering machine-readable navigational warnings across all Canadian waterways. Built on the Secom framework and aligned with IEC standards, the service uses web-based HTTP methods to distribute S124 data, making it accessible, standardized, and ready for integration into ECDIS systems. This approach ensures secure and efficient delivery of safety information through a standardized and interoperable framework. The service currently supports version 2.0.0 of the S124 specification by default, while still allowing users to select earlier versions for compatibility and testing purposes. It includes both active and recently canceled nav warns, where recently canceled refers to warnings withdrawn within the past 7 days, providing a complete and timely picture of navigational safety. Although the service was initially developed and tested within the St. Lawrence Sea Trial area, it has now been expanded to cover all Canadian waterways. This national rollout reflects lessons learned during the trials, including improvements to software, training, and equipment. The service is currently open for public testing and will continue to evolve as we refine its performance and reliability. To support broader testing and integration of S124 services, the Canadian Coast Guard provides downloadable sample datasets specifically tailored to the St. Lawrence Sea Trial Zone. These sample exchange sets allow users to test S124 integration in their systems without needing to connect to the live Secom service, making it easier for developers, vendors, and stakeholders to validate functionality in a controlled environment. Each dataset includes both active and recently canceled nav warns, offering a realistic snapshot of this information as it would appear in operational use. The sample data is available directly from the Canadian Coast Guard's webpage, which is publicly accessible via the web link here, and is updated to reflect the conditions within the trial area. This approach helps ensure that systems are ready for live service integration while supporting training, troubleshooting, and feedback collection during the trial period. Canada has developed a customized internal tool called the S100 testing tool, built by IIC Technologies specifically for the Canadian Coast Guard. This tool plays a critical role in verifying the quality and interoperability of the S100 data we provide for the St. Lawrence River Sea Trials. This tool allows us to visualize and test multiple S100 layers together, helping ensure that they work seamlessly across different systems and services. We are actively testing S123 marine radio services, S124 navigational warnings, S127 marine traffic management, S129 underkill clearance management, and the tool also supports future integration of S421 route planning as well as web map services for broader data access and visualization. Canada's S100 testing tool is a key part of our commitment to modernizing maritime safety and ensuring that our services are interoperable, reliable, and user-friendly. This slide shows a visual demonstration of how S124 navigational warning data appears within Canada's S100 testing tool. It clearly illustrates the transition from manual plotting, where mariners had to interpret and mark warnings themselves, to dynamic digital layers that are machine readable and integrated directly into navigation systems. This shift is a major step forward in modernizing maritime safety, making data more accessible, timely, and actionable. The tool allows us to see how S124 data interacts with other S100 layers, helping us validate the structure, accuracy, and usability of the information we provide during the sea trials. Ultimately, this reinforces the value of real-time, standardized data for safer and more efficient navigation. The Canadian Coast Guard's experience has shown that Secom can be implemented efficiently and affordably, thanks to the use of open source tools and support from the digital incubator. Secom provides a standardized framework for delivering safety information in near real time, which is essential for meeting the operational needs of mariners. We chose to test Secom because it supports a service-based approach, which is the most effective method for delivering navigational warnings like S124 to ECDIS systems. Secom ensures secure, timely, and flexible communication, aligning with the goals of modern maritime safety information dissemination. The outcome of our trials so far has been very promising, and we successfully deployed a Secom-based service using open source libraries. The test confirmed that Secom is scalable, reliable, and cost-effective. The Canadian Coast Guard has developed an S124 compliant service using the Secom library, which was implemented in Java. It delivers nav warrants through RESTful HTTP endpoints, fully aligned with international standards. Secom helps us structure response messages in a standardized way, making it easier for different systems to work together and reducing costs for OEMs. One of the biggest challenges was converting nav warrants from our existing issuing system into the S124 format. That transformation is separate from Secom, but essential for compliance. Despite the complexity, we built and tested the service, including integration with our nav warrant system, in around 1 year, showing that S124 deployment is achievable on a tight timeline. Some features, like subscription-based delivery, are still in development and will be added after further testing. Secom also defines consistent request paths and parameters, which simplifies integration for clients and promotes consistency across implementations. Overall, Secom has been a key enabler in accelerating our S124 rollout while keeping us aligned with international standards. Canada's approach to Secom is inclusive by design. It does not replace existing systems or aggregators. Instead, it gives users the flexibility to access data directly or through platforms they already use. This helps make safety information more accessible and easier to discover. We also support the IHO's as-a-service vision, including test Secom instances and identity registers to encourage global experimentation. Importantly, we believe member states should be responsible only up to the Secom delivery point, just like current broadcast models. Secom enhances transparency, but keeps the final delivery in the hands of OEMs. Canada also plays a strategic role in the Maritime Connectivity Platform as one of 5 host members and a board participant. This reflects our commitment to secure, interoperable digital infrastructure for maritime safety. In short, Secom strengthens existing systems, empowers users, and supports innovation, all while aligning with Canada's values of openness and collaboration. So in closing, Canada is considering Secom as a preferred service-based method for delivering S124 navigational warnings. Secom supports both direct and aggregator-based access models, ensuring inclusivity and flexibility for users. And finally, Canada encourages trial and experimentation with Secom implementations using open source tools and community support. And thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to highlight our use of Secom.
Thank you very much, Valerie. And if there are no questions, we are moving further, going now back to Europe and to Gareth.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Thomas. If you give me just a moment, I'll share my screen. One moment, and Right, so just check you can all see my screen there.
Yes.
Great stuff. Okay, well, hello everybody. I'm Gareth Wimperney, and I'm representing the General Lighthouse Authorities of the UK and Ireland, or of the GLA. Now, I suppose as a government organisation, I've been asked to provide this perspective on the MCP from a UK and Irish perspective. But I think first, probably by way of a bit of background, I should say that I'm an engineer with Brad, and just pressing the right button. Oh, no, why isn't that working? Oh, there we are. It's advanced properly. Right. So yeah, I'm an engineer with GRAD, which is the research and development arm of the GLA. And we obviously do research into lights and communications, radio aids, navigation, and other stuff. But I'm obviously here to talk about the communications aspect and how we think Secom will improve this. So for onto the communications, I suppose we're a lighthouse authority, of course. So our mandate is aids to navigation. That's our core work. And so to do this, we also need to work with and provide data to others, including providing data about our aids to navigation. And this includes working with the UK Hydrographic Office, the various coast guards, vessel traffic services, ports and harbours. Now, these are all separate bodies, separate maritime authorities, separate entities, and in some cases they're across international borders. And so perhaps unlike some parts of the world, we don't have a single body to manage all of this. We're all separate. And so for us, a clear and a secure data exchange is particularly important for us. Now, as well as this data coming out of the GLA, I think I should also need to mention some of GRAD's work, some of GRAD's research work, because we provide a lot of input and expertise to various UK and Irish government and international organisations, all to help establish policy and to help set standards. So on this slide, we can see that as well as the day-to-day role of the GLA, we can see the GRAD role in helping develop the regulation standardisation of aids navigation and of maritime communications. So if we can move on, let's kind of look specifically at what the GLA perspectives of the MCP are. And because the GLA experience perspective, they'll be fed into other sort of UK and Irish government departments as well as internationally, hopefully. We'll see. But now I'm going to look very specifically and very narrowly at what our perspectives are, because you kind of might think at first glance that that the IHO S125 standard would be our main priority, because this is the standard which it provides the aids navigation information data onto the ship's electronic chart, onto the ECDIS. However, in our case, that isn't necessarily the GLA's job. That's more the job of a hydrographic organisation. Different government departments here, so because of that, I'm going to fade that out a little bit. Because the GLA, we instead are looking at providing more detailed information to other departments, such as the UKHO, who will in turn create electronic charts, and to other departments which need much more detailed information. And this is where the S201 standard comes in. It carries much more nuanced data than S125 does. We provide this more detailed information for others to make use of. Now, GRAD, we're currently working on a project to exchange data with the UKHO using S201 to provide data about our aids navigation. And this it'll be rolled out further and providing data to other government organisations using this. Now, of course, all this data, it of course needs to be secured and authenticated to prevent spoofing. So this data is all coming from the General Lighthouse Authorities and not from an imposter. And this is, of course, where Secom comes in. It's providing that security. Now, I'm mentioning this specifically here because Secom, some will tend to think of it as for mainly securing data between shore and ship, or on ship and shore. But here in securing S201, we're using Secom to secure data that's sent terrestrially between maritime organisations. So we're We're using Secom to do this because it's easy to set up. It's a common API. It's across the common API across all services. Why use something new? Secom just works for us. Now, sort of separately from this field, separately from the securing data exchange field, a big concern of ours is securing AIS. It's a separate topic. Preventing AIS messages from being spoofed, and in particular, because we're a lighthouse authority, stopping AIS aid to navigation messages from being spoofed. This is something where GRAD have done a lot of work and done some successful live trials in this, and on our way to getting this off the ground. But these, you can see here, these are two separate things which need securing, and one of them isn't even in the S100, S200 domain, and so this in particular is where the Maritime Identity Registry, the MIR, can help us. And it's because the MIR provides us with that public key infrastructure, the PKI, because the PKI is the tool that's needed to help share the cryptographic keys which are used to authenticate data. So we can use the same MIR, the same PKI infrastructure for Secom that we use to secure S201, and we can use that also to secure AIS, to secure our radio aids to navigation. So in doing that, we've got like a shared PKI, so that saves overheads, and not only saves overheads, but perhaps more importantly, it helps tie the digital signatures used to secure S201 data and Secom, and it ties that with the same signatures used to secure AIS messages. It links all that back to the same cryptographic identity. And this proves that all that data, whether it's S201, it's ATOM data, it proves that all that data comes from the same source or the same maritime authority. In this case, the GLA. So from our perspective, and again, it's a very narrow perspective I'm presenting here, the MCP has the potential to help us secure our data and secure our aids to navigation, and just ties everything together. Perhaps importantly also, helping do that without needing to rely on a central authority. So that's our perspective from a narrow perspective from the point of view of the UK and Ireland Lighthouse authorities. I hope that's kind of specific, very specific example I've given will be informative and useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gareth.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if there are no questions, we are moving on to the last national overview on this matter before we'll have a break, and that will be from Korea, presented by Daeyoung. So over to you, Daeyoung.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Hello. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon. I am Daeyoung Sung from Korea Maritime Cooperation Center, and I am here today to speak on behalf of the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea. I would now like to share the Korean experience in operating the MCP, and based on this, propose ways for international cooperation. The document on the left is the strategy for the development and implementation of e-navigation adopted by IMO. As you can see, e-navigation is an international commitment to enhance maritime safety and efficiency by harmoniously collecting, integrating, and exchanging maritime information between ships and shore. The key point is that the Republic of Korea has played a role since the very early stages when the navigation strategy was first being discussed. For 5 years, starting in 2016, Korea took the first step in implementing MCP in actual maritime areas through a national R&D project called Smart Navigation. As you can see, SMART is an acronym for sea traffic coordination, optimization, maritime domain awareness, active and proactive maritime safety management, remote assistant, and maritime telematics. In simple terms, in addition to the existing IMO navigation. We utilized a high-speed maritime communication network called LTAM so that even small fishing vessels and ferries could benefit. Through this, we can say that we have enabled safer and more efficient navigation throughout the entire process from departure to arrival. The smart navigation project has shown tangible results. Most importantly, maritime safety has been significantly improved with a 30% reduction in collision and grounding accidents. Furthermore, the operational efficiency of ships and ports has increased by 10% and 20% respectively in Korea. This technology advancement goes beyond simply by increasing efficiency. It contributes to the public happiness at sea by enhancing the convenience and safety of everyone working at sea. In the Republic of Korea, this project has been operated as an official service under domestic law since January 1st, 2021. This project was not accomplished overnight. It began with a feasibility study and design in 2015, followed by about 4 years of technology R&D, service infrastructure construction, and testbed operation until 2019. Then after a full-scale pilot operation starting in 2020, and it has now become the stable service it is today. The core technology that forms the foundation of all these digital services is the MCP. We believe the MCP is a kind of digital hub that securely and seamlessly connects various maritime stakeholders with various services. Through this service and functions, it allows users to easily discover and securely use necessary digital services at sea, much like we find and use apps on app stores. And we believe that this technology is based on open source, allowing anyone to participate in its development. Not resting on past demonstration, the Republic of Korea is now advancing its technology one step further through the GMDRT project, recognizing the limitation of the initial system, which focused on domestic small vessels. We are now preparing an information provision system for internationally navigating ships through this R&D. In particular, we are actively adopting international standards such as S100 and Secom with the goal of developing a system that can smoothly exchange data with any ship in the world. Probably Dr. Won-hee Lee, who is directly conducting the GMDRT project, will be able to offer a more thoughtful, detailed explanation in a session following this one. The GMDRT project is already progressing through close cooperation with several countries. For example, we have tested VTS with Finland and jointly developing and testing navigation warning services with Australia and Denmark and Canada. In this way, we are creating better services by combining the technological strength of each country, such as Korea's Actis is utilizing Austria's NAV UI technology to create a better testing environment. MCP and its collaborative achievements have also been officially presented at the IMO. At the NCSR 12, we successfully conducted a technical demonstration of S124 and S421 services in cooperation with AMSA. For successful global services, interoperability is paramount. We are also sharing our digital service development progress with various partners, including those in Europe, Canada, and Australia, and are cooperating closely to ensure that our technologies are compatible with one another. The direct participation of maritime safety authorities such as CCG or AMSA enhances the quality of our services. Through these efforts, we expect that standardized digital services will be available anywhere in the world in the future. Now I will show the main services to be provided through the GMDRT project. As you can see from the table, they are very diverse, ranging from VTS to port support, MSI, pilotage, and tug services. Each service is based on international standard data models like S100. One of GMDRT objectives is to test various services that can be provided in Korean waters and anticipate that actual implementation will proceed after through consideration following these trials. Okay, so discussions on standardization for the seamless distribution of this S100 based data between ships and shore are actively underway at the IMO and IALA, as you all aware. At the IMO, a proposal to create a standardized data communication system using core technologies like MCP and Secom is being discussed. And also at IALA, a plan to establish its own MCP instance to provide real-time maritime services is under review. We believe this is a positive sign, signal that the technological direction we have been pushing is becoming an international standard. Finally, I would like to share the vision and proposal of the government of the Republic of Korea regarding the MCP. To support the international expansion of the MCP, we have been hosting and operating the MCP Consortium Secretariat in Korea since 2021. Furthermore, we strongly agree with international organizations like IALA establishing and operating their own independent MCP instances. For this plan to gain substantial amount of thoughtful through feasibility study must be conducted first, and we are prepared to actively contribute to this process. I have so far spoken about the Republic of Korea's maritime digitalization plans and international cooperation efforts. We look forward to your interest and participation in navigating the future together. And thank you for your time and attention. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, De Jong. And we are actually pretty much well on time now. I have the feeling that there are not really any questions. If there are, please raise your hand. But otherwise, we will follow the program and take a break. I think let's just stick to the program and then have a little bit longer break that we would if we had the Q&A session. So we'll start according to the program that will be 30 minutes past 12 UTC. And there we'll have some presentations that are going a little bit more, being a little bit more specific, demonstrating some of the things that we have been talking on before we dive deeper into the technologies that we are talking about. So we will resume at 12:30 UTC.
Já, það er nefnilega bara lappar í. En það er skrítið nefnilega því það er ekki kalt úti. Nei. Hitastigið er ekki lágt, það er ekki það. Það er svo að segja hafna meira eins og þetta er búin í hitastigið. Það var bara ískalt loft. Og það er ekkert að stilla það þegar það er einhverju skiljar það. Það kann ekki stilt. Það getur ekki stilt. Það var erfitt ekki verið í þessu. Þetta er alveg heilt. Það er alveg heilt.
Mm, 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 mm.
And welcome back, everybody. And welcome to the second part of the seminar of today, which will be featuring me. And I will be talking about the demonstrating the benefits. And I promised that this would be more specific, but I will allow myself to be a little bit high level to begin with, because this is all really the realization of e-navigation. And for someone that's been really on this journey since almost the beginning, it's quite amazing what is happening now. In the early days or early years of e-navigation, it was very popular to take up the definition of e-navigation and talk about that and interpret that of what is that we're meaning with this e-navigation thing. So I will try to do that again after all these years. So this is the definition, the IMO definition of e-navigation, and what we have been striving for since the beginning of this concept in 2006. And it's been quite a journey, and it was a lot of paper talking about this and that and everything in the beginning, being very, very unspecific and being very, very far from anything that could exchange any sort of digital data. But something really happened when IMO or IHO proposed to IMO to use S100 as the standard way of describing the data. Then all of a sudden we had a mechanism to actually harmonizing the data and also the portrayal. So that was really a big step forward. Now we're talking about the technical services and the standards and the means and the platforms to realize that, and that is of course about the harmonized exchange of data as part of e-navigation. So that is what we are achieving now. This is really the technical services, the specification of the technical services and the implementation of the technical services. So this is a really a milestone that we are reached now. And I will also bring up another classic from the early times of e-navigation, the wheel. Some of you will remember that. I think in the first presentation of this, we would be implementing e-navigation. I think it was in 2009 or 10 or something like that. But I think we're getting there now. Because now we have all the building blocks to realize e-navigation, to have these harmonized data and exchange the harmonized data globally using the building tubes that we have been talking about. And it's been a long time. It's been a long journey, but still, we've come a long way since the early days of e-navigation and the early tests we did with trying to implement different solutions. I remember being part of the efficiency project, which was one of the earliest projects that were focusing on e-navigation. We were trying to push all kinds of data through AIS, which was definitely not suited for, and obviously, as we've heard, not a reliable and secure channel. And in hindsight, that can seem very naive now. Now we've come a very long way and now have all the building blocks to do this properly. So the technical services are what is in focus here, and the means to make these technical services. We have heard about the different technical services that are being developed. We have the navigational warnings, delivering data in the S124 format, the ATON information, S125, S201, and a whole lot of other services, underkill clearance, various VTS services, route exchange, marine protected areas, are all being defined. The service specifications are being defined, and we are working on the actual implementation of the services. So now I will focus on one of these technical services, which will be the navigational warnings, because that is the one that we have been working on for the longest time, the one I believe is the most mature. Also, I believe that the product specification is in version 2, meaning that it is finalized as a first ready for production product specification. If it is now, it'll be in 5 minutes or so. So this is very mature. We've been working very long time on the service specification using MCP and Secom, of course. It's been submitted to IHO, but not formally adopted by IHO yet, but hopefully it will be so soon. So what I'll show is a web client, a front end that is capable of consuming this technical service that delivers navigational warnings. It connects and uses the MCP for service discoverability. And then we have a number of organizations from different countries that have actually implemented this technical service following the service specification that we hope will be adopted as the standard way of delivering S124. So we will have this technical service from Canada, from Korea, Denmark, Australia, and Finland, and yeah, using the technologies that this seminar is focusing on. So now I will boldly try to demonstrate this live. So here we have NavUI, and because it's made in Australia, the initial focus is on Australia. I can zoom a little bit out, and then you can see the navigational warnings that is being published from Australia, and they are geographically placed with the geometry that relates to each of the navigational warnings, and I can click on either one of them and get the specific information about that specific navigational warning, and that is delivered in the S124 format, and I can also download the DML file for each of the navigational warnings. I particularly like this one down here that I find it a little bit funny, which is very big navigational warning. It's about space debris danger. So you may get something falling on your head if you're sailing in that area here. So this is navigational warnings following this proposed technical service standard that has been implemented here. And where it becomes really cool is that if I zoom further out, and then I click over here on services, then the NavUI looks into the MCP service registry for the navigational warning services. And here you can see that you have the services from the different countries that I mentioned. So I can click on the CRISO service here, and then hopefully, whoop, we'll get navigational warnings from Korea. Same portrayal, same format, same everything. So if a vessel has implemented this, the idea, of course, is you don't need to implement something specific, as Julia was saying in his presentation. You can just implement things once, and then you can roam the planet and sail around everywhere and just consume the same service and get the data that you need. And we have the data from Finland and Denmark. And it's not only harmonized, but using the identity registry, you also have authentication of the service providers. So this is a secure way and reliable way of delivering the data. and this was Denmark coming on, and apparently Greenland belongs to Denmark because we have a navigational warning there. So it's nice. And we have Canada, and that takes a little bit long to load because they have a lot of navigational warnings. There we go. Very impressive. So we've been working on the specification of the service, and within the digital incubator, these different organizations have been working on implementing the service and be able to implement the service and consume the same service from different providers in one client. And as we will see later, we also have different other systems that can consume the same service. Then we are demonstrating and testing the interoperability of these technical services, which is, of course, the whole thing that we are aiming to achieve. So this is, yeah, a very brief and very easily understandable how this works, and the demonstration of the provision of the navigational warnings, and shown in this NavUI display developed by AMSA. So as I mentioned, we have actually different systems and different clients that have been developed. This was also mentioned earlier in some of the presentations. And something that will be demonstrated now will be an ECDIS system that can actually consume and portray this information. So I will pass the baton over to you, Wang Hee.
Yes, Thomas. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Wonili from Crystal. In this session, I will show you a demo of our developing ECDIS and the S124 navigation warning service. This demonstration is the same as what was shown in the NavUI, and I will show you how it works on the ECDIS. The earlier session already covered the background details, so I will go straight into the technical demo. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So this is our ECDIS. This ECDIS is being developed as a part of the Korea's navigational GMDL project, and it's being built by a company. The company name is the GMT. Before I show you the S124 service, I will just give you a short explanation of our service. In this ECDIS, what we are working on now is a next generation version that supports S100 services. One interesting thing about this ECDIS is that it's a dual fuel ECDIS, which means it supports both S57 and S11 chart. If you look at the Korean side, the navigational charts are displayed using S57 electric navigational charts. And we move to the Australian side. Now it's using an S11 navigation chart. The navigation chart data was provided by Australia. So the important point is that we are using both the previous version S57 and the new version S11. So our ECDIS have the compatibility between S57 and S11. All right, so let's move on the S124 services demo. Okay. Please note that this is a developer's interface, so it might look a bit unfamiliar. I appreciate your understanding. The currently developed services are registered in the MSR of the MCP, so you can search the services that are currently registered. And among services, I selected the S124 and I clicked the MSR button. Then you can see the list of the available S124 services here. So I'll show you the multiple services, so several the countries. At first, I'll show you the Korean services. This is the Korean services, and I run a ping test, and it's successful. Then I run a capability test, and that's successful too. After that, I use the get function and download all S124 data. Then back to the map screen, you can see the Korean, the S124 navigation warnings showing up on the active display. And now I will also check the Australia, the AMSA's Australia. So in the same way, I select the Austrian service and run the ping and capability tests again, and both successful, and download the S124 data. Then when I switch, this is the map screen of the Australia. So you can see that Australian S124 warnings are also displayed correctly. And I also tested the Finland services. Okay, Finland services in the same way. The process is exactly the same, so I'll go through it quickly. So now the visual one is shown in the this. So, and other services is not working now, so I will check the issue. Okay, so through this demo, we show that our actives work well with the S124 navigation warning services from the several countries. That's all for our demo today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mong-hee. So this is really now you can see that there's something tangible coming out of this. We've talked about the different building blocks for making the technical services, and here we can see it is actually working. We have these implemented technical services using Secom and MCP, and it's actually working. And we have a question, Friedhelm.
Yes, I do have a question. I hope you can hear me. Yeah.
We hear you.
Please confirm. Yeah. I do have a question. I think it's really fascinating, and I think the presentation show how this could look like, and well, many people have been working on it for a long time. But I still have the question from the perspective of the mariner, how this is going to work. What we saw in these recent demos was that there's some kind of pull-down menu where you select a service, and we saw it. You said when we do this for the Canadian data, it takes a while to pop up everything. And I was wondering, how will the data or the information be tailored to the route? Where is this going to happen? Because if I'm following my voyage or playing my voyage, I'm probably not necessarily interested in all NAV warnings of Canada, but only those that are relevant for my route. And what I don't understand, where in this whole process is the relevant data tailored to my voyage? That makes sense?
Yes, and I can give one high-level answer to part of it, of course, and one thing is that these are prototypes. So what you're seeing there with the pull down and the selection of service and all of that, a mariner would never be doing that. In particular, not for something like navigational warnings. That would all be happening behind the scenes and automatically, and the consumer would automatically be able to shift from one service provider to another, because you can do geographical lookup and search. So you can ask the service registry who's providing this in this geographical area, and then get the data from that provider. And actually, you can also do that in Secom itself, which is you'll hear something more about that tomorrow, where we have the Marine Protected Area Service, where you have a single service providing data, but you can actually ask that service to give you data only relating to a specific area. So these mechanisms of how you can get the data for your either route or position or future position is something that is built into the system.
Okay.
Maybe somebody else wants to elaborate further on that.
Just to understand that would be part of the MCP service, right? This is nothing.
Yes.
That has to be built into the Actis, or that has to, don't know, be retrieved by some other. I mean, this will be part of the MCP service.
It's part of the capabilities of both the MCP and Secom. But now some more technical people have some more clever answers for you. Ramin.
Yes, your question is basically an issue that we're all trying to solve and discuss. But of course, we have to remember that shoreside and shore-based operators of services cannot dictate what happens on board the vessel, which is something that everyone remembers to make it very clear. And so what happens on the Actis or in other ship systems when they are using these services is still very much undefined, but it is also something that is, I think everyone is understanding that we will need to do quite a bit of actual user research and user interface design when these systems are implemented at a more production level than just prototypes, and when there are going to be more and more services available so that the user interface is actually usable both on the Mariner side, but also then, for example, on the VTS side in many of these services. But that is something that is being worked on, and probably something that won't be specified at a level of any international organization, because we also want to give different device manufacturers and software manufacturers room for competition as long as it doesn't cause safety issues.
Thank you. Jen?
Thank you, Thomas, giving me a say to say something more on the question. Yes, you're right. This is for as this is just for development of the service or harmonizing of service. All the UIs in Actis is dedicated for displaying how the system as a whole works for delivering S1 to 4 data to the ship. So that's why the user interfaces are looking in that way. So as Helen you mentioned, it's very important to give user-friendly interfaces in having this kind of system in reality. So in terms from the MCP perspective, the MSR is supporting the geometry-based search. That means if you have your route from your departure to the destination, place of departure, and to the place of arrival, that you can search the services available on the way to your destination. That is provided by the MSR. The MSR is providing service, searching service from local to global. That means if you are using some service by some contract or by searching some SSR, MSR, which can be combined in a specific area or a specific service provider. The service can be in other places. So the global search can give you a whole coverage of search for your service consumption. That means if you give your route for your service consumption, you can get the result from the MSR services available for your navigation. That is what the MSR is giving to the user side from the MCP perspective. From the actors perspective, I think that there could be a lot of ways to implement how we can provide user interfaces. If I can be very brief, I think I can apply the same policy for receiving the Navtex, which is currently used for the navigators. So if we implement the user interface in another way, I think that can be a more geocaching based approach that can determine the navigation warnings, which is in the vicinity of or proximity of from proximity of my own ship. That could be an approach. So as Ramin pointed out, this is wholly dependent on how the manufacturers of the ACTIS or our further work could find out which is the best way to deliver or to show such information. Thank you.
Thank you, Jin. Other comments or questions? Michael Bergman, yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Just a short reminder in the what we have in the end, we will have various maritime service providers with maritime service registries, but as they are collaborating, the end equipment and actors or something like that will only have to link to one maritime service provider, MCP provider, in order to receive information about all the available maritime services out of the different maritime MCP provider maritime service registries. Just to say you have one link, you're getting the information there. That is the intention as far as I've understood it. Thank you.
You are absolutely right, and that will be covered in more detail tomorrow. Other questions, comments? No. Then we will dive a little bit deeper into the technologies that we're talking about with a presentation of Secom architecture from Ramin.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can all see my screen at the moment.
Yes.
Good. Sometimes these do not work. So a brief introduction on myself. I'm Ramin Beraftavi. I'm a senior consultant with a strong developer / architect background, currently consulting for FinTraffic VTS around Secom, maritime digital services, etc., etc., etc. So let's get into the technical nitty-gritty. I will try not to talk too fast, but I have quite a bit of ground to cover and not too much time. But Secom is a shortening of secure communications between ship and shore, which is standardized in IEC standard 63173-2. Version 1 is published several years ago. Version 2 is under work by the IEC committee, and we'll get back to that a bit later. But what it basically is, it's a set of predefined REST APIs, and then it also has a lot of work around authenticity, encryption, compression, and interactions between actors defined. So it's a bit of a building block. As such, Secom doesn't really offer us much, but it's just one of these building blocks. And I've previously compared it to those of you who remember ages back, or I'm going ahead of myself, but What I've also said, and my first reaction when I started looking at the Secom standard was, it looks complicated. It looks too complicated, in fact. But now I've learned that there's a reason for that. And unfortunately, the Secom standard and nothing that I've seen so far has really explained what the reason is. So everyone has to kind of figure it out for themselves. Sorry about that. But what it is, like I said, it's a standard set of REST APIs that define interactions between the services and their consumers. And it is specifically data agnostic. So the Secom APIs themselves have JSON as their payload, but inside that JSON can be any kind of data payload, which is base64 encoded, which allows it to transmit S100 products, but it allows it to transmit other products as well. All of the communication is secured using TLS. All of the communication is signed. And this is important from the maritime domain or in the maritime domain, because especially any information that goes all the way to the ECDIS, it has to be able to be verified for the authenticity and what the source is of that information. So a signature has to be present, basically, when information goes all the way to an ECDIS. And then in addition to all of this, it also supports payload encryption. So even though the data is encrypted during transit when using TLS, it also supports payload encryption so that the payload can be encrypted during, well, storage. And then, as we'll discuss, there are some other situations where we need to possibly have payload encryption so that proxies in between cannot access it. But for those of you who have any kind of technical background, you're probably very familiar with different kind of layer pictures of computer systems. Here we have the physical layer, a communication layer, where we have different kinds of protocols, of which one of them is Secom. Another one that I've put down there is also MMS, which will be mentioned tomorrow. And then we have the information layer, different S products, or any other products that we want to or need to send. Then we have the functional layer, where I would put the navigational warning services that we've seen, route exchange that has been mentioned, traffic clearance services that have been mentioned, and all of the various other services that actually provide some kind of function using that information. And then, of course, we have the business layer, where we have the different business processes, both on board the vessels and on the shore side, for example, in the VTS, that are actually using these functions to do something useful. Or at least we hope that they're going to use them to do something useful. But I hope that I'm not the only one who's old enough to remember the browser wars from early 2000, where we had this situation of web pages saying they're best viewed with this or that browser, or that we have web developers who are old enough to remember the time when you wanted to actually start developing interactive web applications, which we're all now very familiar with. But at the time, in order to develop them, you had to pretty much, for every different browser and every browser version, you had to develop your own method of communicating with the different, or using the different browsers tools to communicate with your servers. What Secom and the MCP try to do is they try to give us some similar building blocks that jQuery, for example, gave way back then for the developers, that it abstracted a lot of the work. It defined a lot of the work, and you could just use a single API or a single method of doing things to communicate, and could kind of ignore what the browser is you were using. That's what we're trying to define. Secom's architecture is extremely simple. In a way, it's funny that I've got a half-hour slot to talk about architecture, which is just basically REST APIs, and as such is quite simple, but there are complications to it. As we can see inside the orange box, there's that data protection is required from service API layer to the end user device. This holds especially true if we're talking about an ECDIS as the end user device. Why I am not including the server that the data protection is required from the service API into whatever the backend way of the service is communicating is that, for example, a lot of cloud environments these days usually strip TLS out at the API boundary level, just to save resources, because then traffic is moving in a trusted environment, most likely. But that's the area where we're required to have data protection. Secom handles the parts that are in blue, and then there is this infamous last mile that you have possibly heard if you've ever encountered Secom, which is these vendor-specific implementations. But if we start going from the right side of the picture, so from the service and going towards the left, we'll have a service communicating using any IP connection, be it landlines, mobile connections, satellite connections. We really don't care what, as long as it's an IP connection from the perspective of the service and its consumer. And then we have a Secom service interface, possibly also a separate Secom client. That's an option. And then these communicate with the end user device using vendor-specific implementations. The reason for this two-hop way here on the left side is that because the end user device in the maritime industry is most likely on a ship with poor internet connectivity, it means that they have to possibly have some kind of proxy onshore, which is reachable with a better internet connection, a more reliable internet connection that they can then connect to and get information that they receive. We'll get back to these issues in a bit more detail soon. But then in many Secom architecture pictures, you will also see that a part of the Secom is the identity registry and the service registry. In the MCP scope, we're also, of course, talking about a maritime identity registry and a maritime service registry, which are currently the only specified and implemented implementations of an identity and service registry that are also Secom compliant. In this diagram, they're in green and described as in scope for Secom, but not strictly required, because in a way, the Secom communication can work without an identity registry and a service registry. Any REST call that is done using Secom, of course, has to have some kind of X509 certificate passed with it, but it does not have to be given by an identity registry or anything like that. Then it's more an issue of both the service and the consumer business logic on what kind of certificate validations, etc., are done. So these are not strictly required, but basically are very, especially the identity registry is, you could think, basically required for Secom. The service registry is then, like it was described previously, a yellow pages, which is extremely beneficial, especially once we start getting more and more services present. But at the current time, it is still very much a theoretical exercise, I have to admit. Just to define some things a bit, when I'm talking about a service in the Secom perspective, it is typically a shoreside system providing a service for consumers. For example, a route exchange service. And this is typically integrated with, or it's a component of backend systems, for example, a VTS system. Sorry about that. And then a consumer is a system using the service. Basically ship systems, including ECDIS that can use, for example, use the route exchange service. Then, of course, we're talking about servers, which are HTTP servers that is provided both by the service and consumer. And we have HTTP clients on both the service and consumer that can create HTTP calls. This is an important note to remember that Secom typically requires that both the consumer and the service have an HTTP client and an HTTP server available. And then just this definition of the last mile, which is the communication link between the shore server of the consumer and the ship systems, which is in the current version 1 of the IEC's specification left completely undefined. The next version that is being discussed is defining different options, which are a non-inclusive list of options of how to implement the last mile. So there are examples of how to implement the last mile, but no clear definitions of how you must do it. And unfortunately, we need to come back to the fact that Secom does have its complications, even though it really isn't. We are talking about simple REST APIs. But it has to support communication via poor connectivity, which means that, well, like I mentioned, the consumer server may be on land to have a more stable connection. You could think that if you have a vessel that is operating in a place where it has a very stable connection, you could also have the server on the vessel itself. It's always a possibility. We're not saying it has to be done in a certain way. But because we need to support this situation of poor connectivity, we need to consider that fact. And that's why a lot of the or the interactions in the services that use Secom are a bit more complicated. But then also because of this, it supports data compression as a part of the API. So a consumer can request that it gets the data back in the response, for example, if it does a GET, so that it is compressed. And now that we're testing route exchange using S421, for example, the S421 GML files are extremely verbose and are quickly quite large. But luckily, with basic zip compression, they compress to a very manageable size. So that is helping us also that Secom already has that defined in it. So one of these things of why is this specification complicated by adding compression options, etc., etc., etc. to it? Well, the people who actually wrote the first version of the specification knew what they were talking about and knew that this would probably be an issue that needs to be addressed. And then we get back to this, it has to support asynchronous processes, which is why we need to have a HTTP client and server on both sides, because WebSockets won't work. So if you think of most modern web applications that support asynchronous processes, support long-running processes in the background, they usually open a technical thing called WebSockets, for those who are not familiar, which basically has an open connection, an open pipeline between the browser and the server going on there. We can't have that when the vessel's connection might be dropping every now and then. And also, on the other hand, many of the business processes in the maritime domain require human interaction, and they might not always be time critical. So these asynchronous processes might take minutes, tens of minutes, hours, possibly even days at some point, at some times. And that's also something that needs to be supported. And that, again, adds to a bit of complexity on the specification and the kind of interactions it needs to support. The picture is a snippet from the business process described for route exchange, where you can already see that there's various points of systems waiting because there's human steps that are happening. Another thing that Secom needs to support is closed loop communication. For anyone who has worked in the merit onboard a vessel or in a VTS center, etc., this is a familiar term. Anyone who has a military background or fire and rescue background, etc., this is also a familiar term. Closed loop communication is basically something that is used in radio communications to ensure that the recipient has received the message correctly. So it's basically that the recipient in radio communications is parroting back what they heard. Hopefully not parroting back the whole message, but the main parts of the message, and specifically parroting back possibly any numbers, coordinates, and so on. Because we're talking about asynchronous communication, and especially because the fact that if you send something now from the service to the Secom service interface of the consumer, you do get the HTTP/TCP technical acknowledgement at that point of time, which usually from a web development or an API user perspective means that the end user got the message. In this case, that doesn't necessarily mean that. So that's why there's an acknowledgement interface defined, which then allows us to actually confirm when the message has been delivered to the end user device and when it has been opened in the end user device. In this case, opened is not defined in any better way. For the ECDIS testing standards, there's, if I remember correctly, the formulation is that the user has interacted with it in some way. Means that then the opened is sent. This probably depends very much on the business case and the use case and the business process of what of this actual service, then how do you define opened? And like previously mentioned, it has to support payload encryption because there are intermediate steps that may not be trusted in all cases. So the shore-based, if we're talking about a shore-based Secom interface, which is the first recipient of the message from the service, that may not always be a trusted source. I mean, you have to trust it to a certain level, but there could be something in the payload that we do not want that intermediate party to have access to. So that's why we need to have an option to support payload encryption, which Secom then allows by having interfaces where we can exchange one-time secrets between the service and the consumer. And then, because we're again talking about asynchronous processes without WebSockets, which means that both parties have to be able to post possibly large payloads to the other party. Then we have the issue that HTTP has no standard maximum size for posts. Compression will probably save us in most cases because at least so far all of the services we've been playing around with have text as payload and that compresses very well. But there just might be the situation where we're transferring larger binary blobs or whatever. But in any case, there is a situation where an upload or a post won't work because it gets back an error 413, which means that the content is too large. And then there needs to be another method of how it is actually shared. And that is also defined in Secom. And Nicholas will be going tomorrow in more detail on all of these interfaces. So I'll let him describe these in more detail. And then there is a possibility that you need to request access asynchronously. So there might be a business process where either the service or consumer is requesting access to a piece of data, and it needs a human interaction deciding, is this access granted or not? Interfaces for that kind of approach also exist. And then something that Juho mentioned in the beginning of the day when he was describing the functions of the Maritime Identity Registry, which basically provides the public key infrastructure for the MCP domain. But Secom also needs its own public key infrastructure, which can be implemented using a Maritime Identity Registry. It is not necessarily the only way, but currently it's the only way that is actually made in a way that suits the maritime domain. But basically, Secom's PKI is based around standard X509 certificates. Then G1183, which is the ILS specification on the Maritime Identity Registries, defines additional fields that allow us a better approach for the maritime domain. One thing that it defines is it allows us to connect the Maritime Identity Registry MRN, which is a maritime resource name, a unique name for a resource in the maritime domain. It allows it to connect different MRNs that an entity might have inside the certificate. So basically, for example, an ATON, an A2 navigation may have an IALA domain MRN, which is possibly also used in the charts. But then because it might have a digital identity, it will also have an MCP MRN. And that then those two can be tied to each other in the certificate. But also in the certificate, for example, for vessels, we can have the IMO numbers and MMSI numbers of the vessels, which then allow tying the certificate to AIS data, etc., that we get from the vessel. Secom version 1 supported MTLS, but because of issues in implementing support for MTLS end-to-end, even with modern cloud environments, let alone trying to implement MTLS all the way to the ship system side, it's been discussed that Secom version 2 will drop support for MTLS, and the certificates will be delivered as a part of the Secom headers/payload in all of the requests, just to simplify implementations quite a bit. MTLS would be a good approach, but it has its technical complications, which is why that will be a change in the future. And then just something that is important to remember, that the Secom envelope and the payload may have different signing entities. So for example, for a navigational warning service, we have in Finland, we have the Finnish Transport and Infrastructure Agency, which is the authority actually creating the navigational warnings. They will sign the navigational warnings, but FinTraffic is the one providing the Secom service, which is providing the navigational warnings. So the envelope will be signed by FinTraffic in that case. So the service identity and the source of the payload are two different parts. So they may be different, they may be the same, but Secom supports both approaches. And what is missing? Well, if you've looked at revision 1 or Secom version 1, you can see that quite a lot of the algorithms referenced there for encryption, etc., are somewhat outdated and not recommended for use these days. So revision 2 will update all of the algorithms to modern versions, and it will allow updating algorithms as recommendations change, hopefully without having to publish new versions of Secom because of that. Revision 2 also removes dependencies on consumers being registered in service registries, because this helps in cybersecurity on the consumer side significantly. But what Secom does not define is how many times you have to retry a call if it fails or anything like that. That is left for the service designs and the service specifications to define, because it is very much a business case dependent issue. It also does not define any of the business processes around a service. And for that, of course, then we have the IALA guideline 1128, which is a guideline on how to define technical services, specifically service specifications and service designs. And we will be touching upon this issue a bit more tomorrow then. And just a quick note on what the future looks like. So like I mentioned, revision 2 is under work by the IEC TC80 Working Group 17. The timeline currently is to get the final version of revision 2 published in late 26 or early 27. But I would strongly recommend that if you begin implementing against Secom, try to start looking at what revision 2 has to offer. And I do know that a lot of the service designs that are currently published already have some kind of connection towards Secom version 2 already in place in many of them. And thank you. I managed to stay in the half-hour time slot.
Thank you very much, Ramin. So, as you heard, there will be more on Secom tomorrow. More on how to use Secom and the APIs. But are there any questions on the more higher level architecture levels from Ramin? For Ramin? No, it seems not. Okay, but then it seems that we are done for day 1 of this seminar here, and tomorrow will be more technical. Take that as a promise or a threat, depending on who you are. But we will be talking more specifically on the technologies involved in how to use Secom, how to use MCP, and have a lot of examples on different technical services and how they have been implemented. So there will be more details on the technologies tomorrow. We will be meeting at the same time and the same Zoom link. So 10 UTC tomorrow, and hope to see you all there. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.